John, welcome to the Green Gauge. And I like to start these conversations with the macro. So I just wanted to know, looking at the landscape of the direct selling industry, what's changing fastest?
I think a couple of things. Number one, the competition for people's time. There's so many different ways people can make money today that didn't exist when I started 42 years ago. For example, you've got all sorts of things online. You've got affiliate programs that compete with network marketing. You've got things like Uber, etc., that people can do to make part-time income. But now we've got this next great shift coming because of AI replacing a lot of jobs, that a lot of those jobs that people had started doing over the last 5 or 10 years are now being outsourced to robots. So now I think there's going to be a gravitational pull to people back to direct selling for the companies that are astute enough. And there's only a handful of them that are astute enough to recognize that trend and to build systems that will attract younger people. To me, the sweet spot is 18 to 35-year-old people, men and women, that are looking to buy their first house, or maybe they've had their first couple of kids. So yeah, there's definitely a change taking place because of technology, driven by technology, frankly.
Makes sense. And what do you think the next decade of the industry is going to look like?
I think it's going to be driven by AI. I think the people who learn how to use AI and then figure out how to apply that to things like Shopify, TikTok, other platforms that have mass appeal internationally, those people will be incredibly successful. The people who don't figure that out and the companies that frown on that, because there are companies that frown on that type of selling, will be out of business, frankly.
Wow. Okay. And are there industry truths that you think most newcomers never learn until it's too late?
I think most people think that they can rely on a given company. They sell their soul to a company or a mission of a company instead of recognizing that, number one, their own skill development is paramount to success. I've reached the top in 4 network marketing companies in 42 years. My skills transferred from the first one to the second one to the third one to the current one. And if the current one doesn't do its job at some point, right now it is, but if it doesn't, there'll be a fifth one because my skills go with me. What happens is a lot of times people fall in love with company owners or gurus, if you will, in the network, and they start to follow that individual or individuals, and they don't work on themselves. The most important job is to work on yourself and your self-development. Your communication skills, your writing skills, your oral skills of communicating a message to people, your skills of being able to constantly recruit and sell product by understanding the technologies that exist today, that you constantly evolve with the times. Quick example, when I started in network marketing, it was all word of mouth. Everything was just talk to your next door neighbor. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, cassette tapes come out. And then a few years later, videos come out. And then a few years later, DVDs come out. And then and on and on and on. To today, you've got things like what we're doing right now, podcasts, but you've also got AI and all the things that go with AI and all of the swingbacks from AI into platform selling, such as
Right.
TikTok, etc. So if you recognize that and you work on you and your skills, it doesn't matter what your company does or does not do. We've seen over the last 5 years a number of companies who have transitioned out of network marketing into what I call really single level payment systems, right? Where you built a network and all of a sudden the company says, hey, we're no longer going to pay you your X amount of dollar check. We're going to pay you on one level. And those people have had to shift to other companies. Well, in some cases, they've done it successfully. The people who had worked on their skills along the way. The people who were tied into just that company's philosophy, unfortunately, lost a lot of money and are in rough shape as we speak. So you constantly have to be working on yourself. You constantly have to do really 2 things, in my opinion. Number one, understand pivoting. Pivoting is, I'll just give you my own example of that. Back in 2019, I had written a book over a couple of years called Moving Up 2020. And this came out in December of 2019. I had written another book called Leaving Nothing to Chance. Well, this one came out in February 2020. Now, you might recall there was another little event that happened around that time called COVID. So all of a sudden, my 60-city speaking tour over the next 12 months to present these books, not only to my own downline around the world, but to various friends of mine at other companies, that disappeared. Now, I could have cried about it, okay, which I did a little bit, honestly. It's like a lot of money invested.
Sorry to hear that.
And a lot of time. But I said, what can I do? So I pivoted. I started doing podcasts. And all of a sudden, I found everybody was home. So guess what? I could do a podcast and talk to...
Yeah, and it takes a lot of strength to do that.
Exactly. And I could do Zoom calls that weren't podcasts for my particular company to say to people, hey, you're home. What a great time to self-educate. So that was a pivot. That's an example of a pivot in my case. The other thing is agility. Now, I'm an older guy. I'm 64 years old. About a year ago...
Mental agility.
Yeah, about a year ago, I get an email. And the fella that wrote the email said some really nice things to me, right? He was really flattering about my podcast and telling me how smart and pretty I was, which I knew neither was true. And so I finally meet with him, just like we are today. I meet with him and I'm like, hey man, thanks for the nice things you said. He goes, yeah, well, I didn't write the email. So I said, well, did your VA write it? Nope. Did your wife write it? Nope. Did your secretary write it? Nope. He says, AI wrote it. Wow, AI can write that well. Now, I didn't know that at the time, and I started to use some of the AI tools that this particular guy's company has, not only for podcasting, but for other things in my business. And all of a sudden, it opened my eyes to the fact that AI can be our friend at any age. Now, there's a lot of older people that you may interview that are scared to death of AI. They want to go like this, like, I don't want to pay, I don't want to know about it, I don't want to hear about it. Hey, AI is a tool. AI is a tool to make
definitely a colleague and partner.
Exactly. And make it all of that, okay? And make it work for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have no
100%.
responsibility. Yeah, it doesn't mean you have no responsibility. You do what you do best. If you're in direct selling, like I've been all of these years, you still are the person selling ultimately. But if AI gets you to that finish line quicker with a potential customer or distributor, for example, network marketing, if it gets you there quicker, why wouldn't you use it to get you there so you're having more conversations about what you do well, which is selling product or recruiting distributors, okay? That's what you should be using it for, as opposed to saying, well, I'm scared of AI, I don't want to use it. I want to just go and knock on my next door neighbor's door. Well, that's not going to work very well in 2025, frankly.
And you spent decades in the direct selling industry. Is there, for you, a deepest human impulse that kind of pushes people to kind of share products and stories together? What would that be?
I go back to my very beginning. Like I said, April 1983, I joined my first company, April 18th to be exact. By May 18th, 1983, 30 days later, I went to my college commencement, and I had made $800. And in 1983, most people did not have credit cards. So when I said I made $800, I had $800 in my pocket, which was a lot of money in 1983, by the way, especially I'm 20 years old at the time. And Ronald Reagan was our commencement speaker when I graduated college. And he talked about the fact that way back in 1932, when he graduated college, there weren't a lot of jobs. 1983, there weren't a lot of jobs, frankly. So he referenced the fact that he had sought the counsel of a successful businessman. And that businessman said to him, what you need to find is something that you're passionate about, and then have somebody teach you what to do. In his case, it was broadcasting, and he became a minor league baseball broadcaster, and somebody heard him, and he wound up going out to California, and one thing led to another, became an actor, governor, eventually president. And I thought that was a great story, and I thought that it talked to me, even though there were 4,000 people at that event. I felt like he was talking to me personally. He was saying, hey, you already found something you're passionate about. What are you looking for a job for? You already found something that you really like. So that was a great message. And then the second great message happened about 30 days later. when I heard a guy named Larry Thompson up in Hartford, Connecticut say, for things to change, you have to change, and for things to get better, you have to get better. And what I recognized in that verbiage, which Jim Rohn had written that, by the way, I didn't know who Jim Rohn was at the time, but what that message was to me was that I needed to work on me. I needed to work on my self-development, everything from my writing skills, my speaking skills, reading what other successful people had done, not only in the direct selling industry, but in other industries, and really become self-educated and make myself the best brand, so that if I had to move to another company at some point, which I've had to do 4 times in my career, that I was able to do so successfully. If I had not worked on myself in those early years, I don't know we'd be having this conversation today.
Yeah, it's incredibly important to do. What first pulled you into the industry? And like after the story that you just told us, what kept you in it?
What got me into it was the fact that it was a part-time business that I could start. I didn't have to be honest with you, when I started, I didn't have anything else going. I was selling health club memberships part-time, so it wasn't like I had a career.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I was selling health club memberships and making about $300 a month. So I didn't have a real career path, but I was looking for a job. So that's what got me in. Was a friend of mine who I had wrestled with in high school, was a couple years older. He had been with this particular company that he recruited me into, and that's what got me started. But what kept me there was having some limited success in those early days, when I saw, hey, people really will buy these products. People really will use these products. That got me excited, because I said, well, hey, if one person will buy them, if 2 people buy them, if 5 people will buy them, well, that means 5,000 people will buy them. All I need to do is figure out how to get to that many people. Now, that's the hard part. But at the end of the day, I recognized some success early on, and it gave me the confidence to go forward and say, okay, if this is the first step, let me take the second step. Let me take the third step and keep going. What's kept me in over the years, though, it's not only my own self-development, which continues to this day. I'm still a self-development freak. I read all kinds of stuff. My desk here, for example, I've got, I'm reading a book right now, for example, by Dan Kennedy on marketing plans. I'm constantly working on me, okay, to be the best brand that I can be. But what's kept me going through the years is to see some of the success in other people that I've helped with their business. I mean, that kind of gets me out of bed in the morning, to see other people achieve. And then when they come back to me, and sometimes they achieve and I didn't think that they could achieve, you know what I mean? They had gone through difficult circumstances in their life, whatever those circumstances may have been. And when they come back and they're like, you know what you taught me made a difference. I was able to send my kid to a better school. I was able to retire early from my job. I was able to take a beautiful vacation with my family. Whatever it is that they did, that was their motivation, and they attribute it to something that I said or something that I taught them. It makes me feel good that all the work that I did on myself reflected on other people. Because, in this world, you can be all about you, and we see people who are like that sometimes, or you could be about the team. And to me, the team is more important than the individual.
Yeah, I tend to err on that side as well. What separates good in direct selling from great?
Well, I think it's probably good. That's a great question. The difference between good to great, the great ones, and I've worked with some of the top achievers in the history of the industry. The great ones understand that there's a roller coaster, that every day is not going to be good. There's going to be challenges, sometimes governmentally, sometimes internally, sometimes because you're dealing with people, personality clashes. You're going to clash with your downline or your upline or your sideline or a corporate executive, for example. The great ones recognize that it can't all be, one trajectory. But more importantly, they keep their attitude. And if you look at the word attitude phonetically, and you just said, okay, the letter A, for example, is 1 in the alphabet. The letter T is 20, and the next letter T is 20, and you go through that, and you say, okay, each letter corresponds to what number, okay? And you add it up, the word attitude adds up to 100%. So your attitude is 100% of what's going to happen in your business, in my opinion. and it gets you through all of the rocky roads, right? I mean, I've been through product challenges, I've been through government challenges, I've been through company challenges, I've been through legal challenges, I've been through all of this stuff. And so have all the other great distributors in the industry, frankly. And they just understand it. That's just part of doing business. It's like Warren Buffett. I saw Warren Buffett interviewed a number of years ago. And at the time, I think he had 200,000 employees. And he said, I get sued every day. It's just part of doing business. You have 200,000 employees. Somebody's always cutting off a finger or, getting run over or something. And it's sad, but it's just a reality of having that kind of a sales force. Well, when you have a sales force that you work with and you lead, like I have been fortunate to have in my career, there's always something going on. Somebody's always unhappy about something. The new box came out and it's blue and it should have been purple. Okay, well, you got to spend 5 minutes explaining, well, the company thought it should be blue because they thought it should be blue. Right, and sometimes it's as simple as that. And other times there's life interference. And what I mean by that is all because you're in direct selling, people still get sick, people still die, people still have family issues. Okay, so sometimes you have to step back from the impulse of I'm trying to build a business with this person and just listen to what happened in their life and see if you can help them. Okay, and sometimes listen from a standpoint of if a person's complaining all the time, then they're good at complaining. But if a person complains every other year and they're in your organization, put down everything else. Don't be checking emails or Facebook. Listen to what that person has to say. Because if that person complains and they're not normally a complainer, they're normally somebody who's a low maintenance distributor, if you will, right? And they're doing their own thing, and all of a sudden they call you and they say, hey, John, we got a challenge. We have an issue. You better pay attention and respond accordingly, whether it's a corporate situation or, upline, downline situation, whatever the situation happens to be, you better listen really, really good. That's one thing I had to learn the hard way. In the early part of my career, I was so aggressive that I didn't really listen. As I've gotten older, I realized, hey, let me listen to what this person has to say, whether I agree or disagree with whatever the problem is. Let me at least let them express it, because they didn't call me to shoot the breeze and tell me what the weather was like where they live. They called me because they have a concern. Can I fix their concern? Sometimes, sometimes not. But I certainly can at least listen to it and hear them out on what they have to say and see if it's something that maybe, an owner needs to hear, an executive needs to hear, I need to hear, somebody else in the organization needs to hear. And that's been one of my personal growth things over the years, is learning to listen to other people.
Yeah, I think taking that time is incredibly valuable as well, and can give some fascinating insights into the structure of the organization and the maybe changes in hierarchy that could help. And is there something else that people misunderstand about the psychology of decision making?
Yeah, if you take the word decide, okay, it's got IDE at the end. Okay, there's a lot of words that have IDE at the end that represent finality, if you think about it. Okay, so the word decide is a word that once we make a decision to go forward on something, sorry, I thought I shut the ringer off there. Once we make that decision to do something, whatever it happens to be, we have to realize that all decisions are final, that there's a finality to decisions. Okay. One of the things I tell people when they get involved with me in the network marketing industry is you've made a decision that's going to change the course of your life. Now, what does that mean? It means that a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to be a different person, not because you just made more money, that's a given, but you're going to be a different person in terms of how you've grown as a parent, as a spouse perhaps, as a partner perhaps, as a leader in your community. All these things are going to change, okay, once that you make a decision to go forward. And they're going to hopefully improve, right? They're going to improve the human experience, right? I mean, like, you're not doing this to go backwards; you're doing this to go forwards, right? In life. So when I explain that to people, that's heavy for some people. That's like, wow, this is a really big deal. It's like, yeah, because a lot of people join these businesses very part time, and that's great. Okay, to make part time money, that's what they're really intended for, is part time money, and that's terrific. But if you really make a decision that I'm going to devote myself to do what you've done, John. I'm going to be full time in this business. I'm going to build a large sales force. I'm going to lead other human beings. Okay, it's a serious commitment. And the first commitment is to you. Second commitment is to your family. Third commitment is to your downline. Fourth commitment is to your company, in that order. But there's other people involved. You know what I mean? It's a team sport. So you have to lead from the front of the room. You cannot lead from the back of the room. You've got to lead from the front of the room. What does that mean? It means you keep sponsoring people. You keep getting customers. You keep showing your people, hey, I'm here every single month. I've been in my current company 29 years. I recruited a new guy in Los Angeles last night, for example. Okay. This Saturday, when it's Thanksgiving weekend here in the U.S., right? A lot of people are off, goofing off, watching college football, having a good time. I got a big call scheduled with some of our medical people for the downline. Why? Because some of my downlines here in the United States, but I'm in 17 other countries. 15 of those countries speak some level of English. Well, it's not a weekend off for me, and I can afford to take it off financially. But from a leadership standpoint, I need to be on point, and I need to lead from the front of the room, so to speak. So my people go, well, if he's not taking off Thanksgiving weekend, I shouldn't take off Thanksgiving weekend. That's leadership, right? Teddy Roosevelt, who was probably one of my 2 or 3 favorite U.S. presidents, before he was president, he was he was a military man. He was on a horseback at a battle, and the chances of him surviving that battle were slim and none. And somehow he survived. But the guys on the ground that followed him became lifelong followers of his because they said he led from the front. Now, he was a wealthy man already. His family was very wealthy. He could have hidden back. He could have been in a tent and said, "You guys go, go attack that hill and let me know how it turns out. Give me a report." Instead, he led from the front. He got on that horse and he led those men into battle, some of which did not make it. Okay, but he became a leader by doing that. And to me, what I do, I'm not going to get shot for, frankly. But at the end of the day, I got to be willing to lead from the front. And sometimes that's not comfortable. Sometimes there's things that are adversarial. Okay, but you have to be willing to do that if you want to lead people and you want people to follow you, if you will, into the marketing battle of building companies or building brands.
I think it takes a lot of vulnerability to do that as well. And it's one of the elements that makes a leader perhaps an ethical one.
Big time, big time.
So you've taught thousands of people. I was wondering what patterns you see in the successful people that...
You know, that's a great question. Somebody asked me that something similar the other day, and this might sound funny. Leaders get up early. Now, I that's probably not the answer you were looking for, but leaders get up early.
Or hoping for.
Okay, but well, I got. Don't worry, I got more. But leaders get up early. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, attack the day, right? There's a Latin phrase, okay, hazard set forward, which means forward in faith. Well, a leader gets up early and gets about their day early. Why? To get all of the minutiae done that they can't do during business time. So, for example, what I find as a pattern, and this, by the way, is not just in distributors. This is also, I train insurance executives also. I also train CEOs. I find they all get up early. They're at the gym at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Why? That's their time, right? They get their workout done. Maybe they get some paperwork done. Maybe they get some correspondence done if they're working in international markets like I do, and they've got people in different time zones that need texts and things. They get all that stuff done while the current business, right, the business, let's say, in North America is still asleep. They're dealing with Asia. They're dealing with Europe. They're dealing with other parts of the world. They're dealing with all the stuff, plus their personal stuff, okay, early in the morning, with the idea that by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, they're fully attentive to their day. And I find that that's a pattern. Number two, I find what I call the entrepreneurial brain. The entrepreneurial brain, and I did some studies on this, by the way, with a psychiatrist from India, and he explained it very well. But there's a part of the brain that if you're an entrepreneur, it wakes up about a half hour before sunrise. And if you talk to people that study like Ayurvedic medicine, they'll tell you that this is a fact. I never knew that, by the way. These guys told me all of this, and I did my own studies. I was like, wow, interesting. But that part of the brain wakes up. And what do most of us do? We want to fight sleep because somehow we're told we're supposed to be getting up at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time. Get up. Go with it. Get your self-development work done. Get your praying done. Get your workout done. Get all the stuff done that doesn't interfere with the rest of your day where you got to focus on your current business matters. So that's number one. Number two, you got to fall in love with your business. You got to fall in love with your business. If you don't love it, you may achieve a certain amount of income where you just say, that's it, I'm not going to do this anymore. And that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But I fell in love with network marketing in 1983 conceptually. In 2025, and we're almost to 2026, I'm still in love with the idea of network marketing and what it does for people. So what keeps you going after 42 years? It's not money. You can never have enough of it, so to speak, but I've got enough of it from my standpoint that we can live very comfortably the rest of my life if I never do another thing. I love what I do because I see the impact both of my current brand, what it does for people in terms of their health, but I also see the people grow that I work with and coach. And to me, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is I want to see people grow. Okay, so that's the second thing that I find. And by the way, I find that in other industries too. You talk to a lot of CEOs or founders of companies, they're driven past the point of where the economics matter. The bills are paid, the rent's paid, the house is, they got the house, they got the boat, they got the cars, they got all that stuff, the materialistic stuff, but they're focused on helping people. And those are the best companies. Those are the companies when we talk about great companies versus good companies, okay? The great companies are philosophically that way, okay? Walmart's been that way. Disney's been that way. There's other companies that come to mind that have been that way, okay, where they're philosophically driven. And once that CEO or founder passes away, sometimes we see them change direction and go the wrong way, and other times you just see them continue. The Amway Corporation, for example, still owned by the two families that founded it many years ago, still philosophically a great company, okay? The way that they do things, the way that they treat people, including vendors and everything else, right? So we see that, and it has to be a cause. It has to be greater than just making money. Just making money, you get to a point, if you're successful, where it's not enough. You've got to have greater goals than that. And you see that in the great entrepreneurs in the world. The great entrepreneurs in the world aren't driven by money. They're driven by what can I do? You look at Elon Musk. Whenever we think of Elon Musk and his politics and everything else, look at the stuff the guy's developing for the brain as one example. Why? Because he needs the money? Hardly. He's doing it because he's looking at some of the diseases of the brain, okay, the dementias and the Alzheimer's and the diseases, and saying, how can I make an impact with all of this money and success that I had? Right? So that's what we need in the world, is more entrepreneurs driven for cause versus just profit.
Yeah, I find it to be the epitome of kind of the engineering thinking. And direct sales, I think, often can face criticism about ethics. So I was wondering what your experience, what does ethical leadership look like to you?
Well, it's funny, the ethical leaders in the industry, both as distributors and corporate owners, okay, and that's somewhat changed. We have a challenge right now in the direct selling industry. There's a lot of investment banks buying companies, and investment banks, by their very nature, are profit driven. They don't really care about guys like me. They could care less, frankly. They don't even know me, okay, and they don't know the other people in the companies that they buy. And a lot of times they'll do things that are very unethical, in my opinion. Okay, they'll come in and they'll take a brand that's been around for a number of years. They'll cut up a company. They'll take the downline and they'll sell it to this company. They'll take the product and they'll sell it on Amazon, and that's wrong. Okay, and we see that. But we also see some companies that have had succession plans generationally that are great companies that continue to be great companies to this day. Okay, without naming some of them, I can tell you, there's some great brands in our industry that continue to be great brands because they're led by people that have the right intentions, okay, with those brands, and they understand the history of those brands, okay, and that's what we need. As from a distributor standpoint, Bitcoin's a scam, okay. Anything with Bitcoin and network marketing is a scam. Stay away from it. You'll wind up in jail or worse. You'll wind up with your reputation destroyed. Stay away from anything that is selling money as the product. You can't do that. Your government, I don't care what country you live in the world, you can't sell money. Find a company. If you're looking for a company, folks, if you listen to our interview, find something you're passionate about. Whether it's a product like I sell for the immune system, whether it's something like my friend Brian sells. Well, he sells a Legal Shield product that helps people with legal matters. I've got other friends that sell skincare products. I mean, there's great products out there. Find one that you like, that you go, hey, if I wasn't becoming a distributor in XYZ company, I would purchase this product as a consumer because I think the product has validity for me. Okay, that's the litmus test. Okay, is if you don't like the product or the service, you're not going to do the hard work to go out and market it. Why would you, right? Once again, you got to fall in love with your business. Okay, my friend Joe Garcia, another Canadian guy, he lives over in Toronto. I was talking to him the other day, and he said, when he got into network marketing 35 years ago, he fell in love with the business, and guys like us, we still love this after all of these years because we see the good side of it. Now, we do see the bad side of it. Like I said, there is a downside, but there's a downside to selling cars or houses or insurance or anything else. There's some unscrupulous people, but anything that smells like a scam, stay away from. And once again, if you're selling money, if you're selling Bitcoin, if you're selling something that fundamentally that a government agency would look at it and say, that's not a real business, you're just doing something that's scammy, stay away from it. Don't get your reputation soiled by that. There's plenty of good choices of things that you can be involved in, but also look for companies or uplines that have self-development attached to it, because you have to grow as a person, like I did in 1983. Okay, I joined a great company. It's still around. Okay, it's one of the greats. Okay, I'm not with that company anymore, but I heard about people like Jim Rohn, for example. I heard for things to change, you got to change. I heard these things that were said by some of these people like Bobby DePue, Larry Thompson, Mark Hughes, etc. And those are the things that started to mold me as a distributor and as a leader. Okay, so find a company that also is philosophically into helping you grow as a person. If they're not offering those things, find a different company, frankly, because most of the good companies are also wanting you to grow as a person, because as a person, as you grow, your business is going to grow too, because you're going to attract other like-minded people.
And how does one distinguish between persuasion and manipulation?
Good question. Persuasion is basically giving a person what I call all the tie downs. Like, wouldn't you agree that building a home-based business makes sense for you and your family? Manipulation would be, you've got to do this, okay, because you just have to do this because you've got no other options. Well, you always have. In North America anyway, we always have other options, right? There's a million other options. So at the end of the day, I want that person to want to join me because they see a pathway to not only making money, but also to grow as a human being. Okay, I don't want to manipulate anybody. Okay, now, do some people need a push? Sure. Yeah, sometimes you got to push somebody to say, hey, you really should be doing this. You really should be using this product, for example. Like, I'm a product guy. Okay, I'm all about product. Everything I've brought to market has been scientific over the years. Okay, so at the end of the day, I'm very into, hey, you may not want to join the business, but you really should be taking this product for your immune system, for example. Okay, do I want you to join the business? Of course I do. But at the end of the day, let me start with the product. And that's the other key is, does that person feel strongly enough about their product that they tell you that? Give you a fast example. I helped to bring together two parties that wound up in an acquisition a number of years ago, a big acquisition, a several $100 million acquisition. And I went to this company's, I wouldn't name the company, but some people will know if they're in the industry. I went to this company's launch when the new owner, who was my client, colleague, took over. And several thousand people in this meeting room in San Francisco. And I don't know anybody in the company outside the owner, which is kind of funny in itself. I don't know one distributor in this particular company. It's an old company. And I go to lunch and I just looking for a place to sit down and have my lunch. And I sit with this table and the people start to quiz me. Like, how long you been in the business? Well, I'm not in your company. Ooh, you're a prospect. Not quite. I can't tell them the whole story of why I'm there, but I tell them, well, the owner's a friend of mine. Oh, okay. By the end of that luncheon, they had convinced me that the fact that I was not taking alfalfa sprouts every single day, that how in the world have you lived this long, John? Well, you know what? I love that passion in distributors when they tell me, I don't know how you're surviving without taking our product. Love that kind of passion. That's the kind of passion I love to see in other people. Okay. Once again, I didn't take the alfalfa sprouts. I do eat alfalfa, by the way, but I didn't take their particular product. But I love the passion that they all felt so strongly, that they weren't trying to recruit me into their business, but they all told me how great their products were and that I should take them.
And where do you think personal responsibility might sit in a business that's built on human connection?
Well, there we go. Now it's off. Self-responsibility. It's like anything else. I mean, self-responsibility is paramount to being successful in life. Okay, if you won't take the responsibility, for example, for your health. Okay, if you smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day and drink a 6-packs every night, and you live at McDonald's, and you get sick, you can't expect me to pay your health care. That's just unrealistic, right? And it's the same thing to me in business. If somebody won't take the responsibility to learn the business, okay, don't look for me to pay your bills. I'm here to guide you and tell you what you should do, but you've got to take the ultimate responsibility to do it for you and your family. Not for me, not for your upline, not for the company, but for you and your family. That's got to be first and foremost in your thinking. You've got to have the responsibility to want to do that, okay, for your loved ones, like I do for my loved ones, okay? And self-responsibility is the ultimate freedom, if you will, because once you get it in all aspects of your life. It carries over into everything else that you do, all right? That you're become a responsible citizen, a responsible member of the community, a responsible distributor, a responsible business person. And that's what we need in society, frankly. We need people who are responsible. And frankly, most people are responsible, which is good. But some people don't realize that. They want you to do it for them. I can't do it for you. I can't, I kidded somebody one time on that subject. I said, do you want when your check comes that I come and pick you up and take you to the bank and cash it for you too? Oh, no. Why would I want that? Well, why would you want me to build your business for you? My job is to give you the building blocks, okay, to give you the how-tos. Your job is to execute it. And then when that check comes, you take it to the bank. That's when we had actually banks. Now when everything's online, but you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's like, don't ask me to hold your hand forever. At some point, it's like Jim Rohn used to say, those kindergarten desks are small for a reason. You're supposed to outgrow them. It's the same thing in business. You're supposed to take responsibility at some point for your future.
And after decades in the arena, what wisdom do you feel the next generation needs the most?
Well, one thing of just what we're talking about, responsibility. And I see it in a lot of young people. I see a lot of great young entrepreneurs. For example, I did a call with James from the School of Hard Knocks a couple of weeks ago, the guy who goes up and interviews all these super successful guys. And I was lucky to be on a call with him that I was a speaker on. And I'm going to do some things in February down here in Austin with his company. But I look at like James, for example. I mean, James will be a billionaire. I don't know when, but he will be a billionaire. Why? He's 23 years old, the way that he works, but more than that, the fact that he asks questions. If you go back in time to Napoleon Hill, okay, and Think and Grow Rich, what did he do? He went and he asked questions of all the super successful men of that age, right? Henry Ford and DuPont and the other great entrepreneurs in that era that he lived in. Okay, that's what this young man's doing, and he's not the only one. I see this in a lot of young people. So I think our future is really, really good. I think the flip side of that is we also have a lot of lazy young people, okay, that are planning on mom and dad being around forever. Well, mom and dad probably aren't going to be around forever. And unless they leave you a huge trust fund, and then what are you going to do with it? Are you going to spend it responsibly so that it lasts? So what I tell all young people, and I do coach a lot of young people, including my own son and several of the kids that he played hockey with that kind of became, I don't know how they became attached to me over the years, probably because I was the entrepreneur of all the dads. And I still have one young man, for example, that I coach down in Houston. And he's just doing great. You know, he's getting a degree in building while he's starting his MBA. He's working full time. He's newly married. He's doing all the right things. He's got a great work ethic. I do see a lot of young people like that. But my advice to all of them is, okay, to do what I did, to work on themselves, to work on their self-development, to read the books, to listen to the podcasts that didn't exist when I started, right? To listen to the experience of people that have been successful. And then apply AI to everything that you do. AI is the secret sauce that did not exist, okay? AI will make more millionaires than anything in the history of our planet as a tool, okay? It's going to make more millionaires, mark my words, over the next 5 years than over the last 50 years for the people who apply it properly to their respected business. That's my other advice. Learn AI. If you're looking for a profession, you don't want to be in direct selling, and you say, hey, maybe I'm a technical person, machine learning, go to school for it, learn it, live, eat, and sleep it for the next 5 years. You look at companies like NVIDIA, for example, you know, first multi-trillion-dollar valuation of a corporation on the planet. Well, what's their business? Supporting AI, right? You look at other businesses that most people have never even heard of that are growing all of a sudden on the stock market. What are they doing? Supporting AI. You look at this race that's going on between the United States and China over technology. What's it really about? Who can build more plants faster to support AI? Now, the flip side of AI is things like Uber are going to go away. Uber already in certain cities are being driven by robots or by automated cars. Amazon just replaced 21,000 employees in Las Vegas, for example, right before Christmas with robots. So that's the flip side of it, is if you said, hey, I'm going to go to work for one of these companies and I'm going to have a job driving a forklift for the next 40 years, no, you're probably not. But you better learn AI, and then you better figure out how to apply it in some sort of little business, whatever that little business is. If it's direct selling, obviously that's something I would suggest. If it's not direct selling, figure it out. Even if you're a landscaper, if you're a florist, if you're whatever you are, figure out how to use it to your benefit, because it's not going anywhere. If you use it and your competitor doesn't, you're going to beat your competitor.
So Green Gauges explores how knowledge travels through communities. And in your experience, how do ideas actually spread inside a direct sales organization?
Well, really by success. You know, success leaves clues. Once somebody is successful, other people say, how is that guy or how is that woman doing what they're doing? And people will follow the leader, because everybody wants success, but a lot of times the methodology needs to be defined, and somebody needs to be the leader. Somebody needs to be the pioneer in doing certain things. For example, in my current company, 29 years ago, I put together a sales letter. And this was in a day where you bought a mailing list, you wrote the letter, you bought the envelope, you went to the post office, you mailed it, and then in there was a thing called a bounce back card that people would mail back to you in a self-addressed envelope. And then I did a cassette tape that I mailed out. Well, we put 3,000 people into business by doing that, myself and 4 other guys. What happened is all of a sudden everybody that came in said, how do I use that tape? So we had over 1 million tapes go out in the mail over the next couple of years that people used this cassette tape of me recording 2 doctors from McGill, by the way, right near hometown there. And that story became the story of that company. 29 years later, that company's actually being marketed right now to be sold for over $100 million. Okay, so at the end of the day, all right, something that we started with a cassette tape and a letter led to all of this success from a marketing standpoint. Now the product had to perform, obviously, or we wouldn't have a business. But my point is, think in terms of exposure. Okay, how do you get maximum exposure to anything that you do? That's the idea. And if you do that with anything, any good idea, it will become a movement. And once it becomes a movement, it takes on a life of its own. People that you don't even know start to say, well, here's what John's doing, or here's what Bob's doing, or here's what Mary's doing. And next thing you know, it just becomes viral. And then, of course, once it hits the internet, it becomes virtual. And once it becomes virtual, then people start doing it in foreign languages, foreign countries, and all of a sudden you have a big brand. Now, that's all easier said than done, by the way. But at the end of the day, that's kind of been my career. I go back to the very beginning. The first company I was with, their methodology was real simple. You use a product, you wear the button, and you talk to people. You wear this silly button, okay? And so 3 things. You use the product. Well, that was pretty simple. You stuck this silly looking button on it, put a hole in your shirt, okay? And people would talk to you about that button. And then you went out and you talked to people. Well, in 1983, that worked. Well, that particular company is now about an $8 billion company 40 some odd years later from that simple concept, right? The Primerica, what's called Primerica today, used to be called A.L. Williams. It was started by a guy named Art Williams, football coach from Atlanta. And he told people, for example, buy term and invest the difference, right? Take your money and put it into mutual funds or other investment vehicles rather than whole life insurance. Well, whether you agree or disagree with that, that became a movement where all of a sudden one person told another who said, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I'd probably do better on the mutual fund. Let me do that. And then they told another, and then it became a business. And today, it's the largest direct selling company in the world. They do more revenue than any company out there, and they were owned by Citigroup. I'm not sure if they still are or not. But my point is, all of a sudden people attach to an idea that's working for other people, and all of a sudden it becomes this movement, and before you know it, it blows up all over the place, and you have a huge business. And then people say, how did we become successful? Well, somebody started with an idea. And the idea was good enough that other people liked it and shared it with other people, and before you know it, you have a business out of it.
And what role does storytelling play in sustaining belief, momentum, and culture?
Huge. We're in a storyteller's business. I'll be telling stories on Saturday about what's happened with our product and our brand over the last 29 years. There'll be brand new people on that call. And I'm glad you asked that question, because many years ago, I dated an actress in New York, and she happened to be in Phantom of the Opera, right? And I was out to dinner with her one night with one of her actress friends who had been in the show from the very beginning when it first started on Broadway. And I said to her, she had done I forget the amount of shows, literally thousands of shows, right? You have 8 shows a week on Broadway. And you normally get 1 show off. So this girl had done 7 shows a week for 10 years, let's say. So I don't know how many shows it is, 7,000 shows, let's say. And I said, how do you do that every night? Because it's not like you can ad lib, right? It's not like you can make it up. It's like you got to sing this, and then this person sings this, and this person moves here, and you got all these moving parts. I said, how do you do that? She made a great point. She said, I remember that every person who spent their hard-earned money to sit in that seat, this was their first show. And every time I do something where I've said the same thing, God knows how many times, Saturday there will be new people where for them it's their first exposure. They deserve, like that person sitting in the seat watching a Broadway show, they deserve the right information so they can make the decisions that they want to make to go forward with the business or not. That's where the storytelling aspect of network marketing is so unique compared to a lot of other businesses that are just very black and white. The storytelling is extremely important. And the stories of success, the stories of product success, very, very important. Without making claims, people need to hear that your product works. Your product's got validity. Otherwise, why do they want to spend their hard-earned money on it? No more than if you went to that Broadway show and the actors got up there and said, you know what, guys, we don't really want to do the show tonight, but we're going to keep your money. Same thing. We want to always give our very best performance so that the people listening, get what they need out of it.
And what does a healthy or ethical community look like to you?
An ethical community is one where people tell the truth at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they don't remember, they don't need to remember what they said at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If I said, hey, the sky is blue, happens to be blue today, but if the sky is blue, at 3 o'clock I don't tell you that it's purple, and you go, but you told me it was blue this morning, John. Yeah, but it's really purple. Well, don't do that to people. Give straight answers. People deserve them. Treat everyone with respect and dignity, number one. Number two, be ethical in your answers and what your product or your service does do. You don't need to exaggerate. One thing drives me nuts sometimes about the network marketing industry, the direct selling industry, is exaggerations. For example, if you're selling a natural product, it's a natural product. It's not a drug. It's not going to cure anything. Don't tell anybody it's going to cure anything. Well, really it cures. No, don't use that word. Number one, it's illegal. But more importantly, that's not what your product does. Can your product help if you have a certain ailment? Probably can. Take it and find out. But at the end of the day, don't make erroneous claims that put yourself and your company at risk. There's no reason to do that. It drives me nuts when I see people exaggerating things that I know better within my own company. All right, I have to reprimand people sometimes where they make these ridiculous claims. My product has 92 patents. What are you going to exaggerate? Okay, you're going to make it up. You're going to tell people it does something that it doesn't do when we're telling you it's got 92 patents. Like, believe the patents. These governments issued these patents. They agreed with what they said. Don't go tell them something, though, that it's going to do something in addition that the company, the manufacturer, the formulators, the doctors, etc., wouldn't support. If they wouldn't support it, don't say it. And that's just not only with my company, but I hear other companies the same thing. People making crazy exaggerations. And then we wonder why we get regulators sometimes down our throats. Well, it's your fault. Don't make exaggerations. Just tell people the truth. They'll use your product. If they like it, they'll come back and use it again. If they don't like it, they won't. Plain and simple.
Thank you so much. That was everything I'd prepared. I have a final question for you, which is, I hear the word authenticity used a lot, especially in marketing context, in network marketing, in direct selling. And I was wondering, how important do you think authenticity is in the context of the industry?
Well,
and how you would define it as well.
I would say that, authenticity is not only, once again, telling people the truth about what something does do or doesn't do, but I think it's also a thing where we want people to be real. People say to me sometimes, because I've had this success in multiple companies, they think that I'm different than they are. No, I'm not. I'm a grinder. I'm nothing special. I'm just a guy that works really hard at his craft. And when they understand that, that's very authentic versus them thinking that somehow, I put on my pants different in the morning than they do, right? It brings it down. And I'll give you a personal example. My own daughter, my oldest daughter, went through drug rehab a number of years ago. And I disclosed that on Facebook and asked people to pray for her. And they did, and thank the good Lord, she's fine now. But when I did that, I had people say to me, we didn't think you had any problems. I'm like, why? Because I get a big paycheck? Okay. You can get a big paycheck, your kids can get on drugs. You can have a big paycheck, you can get in a car accident. You can have big paychecks, so you can get cancer. All these things happen to successful people the same way they do to people who maybe haven't achieved the success that they're going to achieve in their life yet. That's being authentic and being real. And sometimes I get around network marketing people and man, oh man, it's like they're pretentious, and it's like, who are you going to attract not being real? You're going to attract people being you and being real, and them seeing, hey, this guy's got the same problems I do. He just figured out something in a business. That to me is being authentic. And that attracts more people, to be very frank with you, than trying to have people think that you have to be something special. If I had to be something special in 1983, I wouldn't be here in 2025. I just had to be a guy that was willing to learn and work hard. And most of the people that I've watched achieve in companies, same way. Most of them are just really hard workers. But they've always worked on all those principles that we talked about, self-development. That's always been at the core. You interview any one of us that's been around a long time. It's about self-development, 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 constantly reading, constantly working on ourselves. That's vitally important as a human being, number one, as a successful business person, number two, as a citizen of the human community, number three. Those things are really important and authentic. The real leaders in the industry are very authentic people. That's the funny part. The ones that I see that are kind of putting on an air that they're something that they're not the people who are really normally successful. They're the people who are trying to fake out other people that they're successful. And don't follow them. Follow the people who are real. Follow the people that have some warts and some bruises. That's reality.
Truly, I think life behind closed doors is very different from what, your internal process is, and people build up maybe a dissonant perspective of everything that they see in the digital virtual world. But when it comes back to like the organization and working with people, it can be a very different experience internally than it is externally.
It is, and at the end of the day, just be real with people. You know what I mean? Like, look, there's so much pretense in the world. Just be real with people. Be honest with people. Just be you. Let them be them. Meet them where they are. Not everybody thinks they need to make X amount of dollars per month. Most people just want to make some extra money. Just be honest with them and how they can do that. Don't hype them. Don't oversell them. Don't lie to them. Don't deceive them. Just be straight with them. And if you do that, you're going to have success, because you're going to attract people who go, hey, you know what? That guy's going to tell me the truth. And he's going to tell me what I need to do to achieve, okay? And maybe I don't want to do all the stuff that he does, right? And it's like the gym. You go in and you see somebody who's in great shape, right? They look like a bodybuilder. Well, yeah, they're spending, 6 hours a day, and they're watching their diet, and you go in and you go, hey, I just want to work out. Well, you're no better or worse than them. But if you want what they have, you got to do what they're doing. Okay, there's no shortcuts. Well, it's the same thing in multi-level. If you want to make the big money, you got to do certain things that the part-time person doesn't need to do. But don't tell that part-time person that they're a failure if they're not willing to do all of that, because their goals might be an extra $500,000, $1,500 a month for a good car. Okay, or their kids' violin lessons, or whatever it happens to be that's dear to their heart. They're just as successful in their business if they achieve what they started it for, than you, who might have the big goal of a big number. So just be consistent with people in terms of meeting them where they are and helping them get to where they care to be.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. It's been fun.